you have the opportunity to impact your client's life in all aspects.
The updated weight loss specialization will help trainers in many ways expand their career.
For the first time, we talk about the psychosocial aspects, the sociocultural.
You're going to be able to truly understand what your clients are going through when they have a specific weight loss journey.
All new information, new trends.
We were able to develop what we called personas.
To provide examples of what you might experience as a fitness professional when you encounter a client.
And build confidence as the months go by.
I'll feel more comfortable in my skin.
My self-confidence will improve.
Empathy is something that runs through the weight loss specialization.
It's about guiding people.
Regarding nutrition, regarding exercise.
I can go to bed at night knowing that I've done something good for the world.
It's great content and a blueprint for how to get results with your clients.
We put together a complete solution to help you, the professional, become the next weight loss specialist.
I'm Brad Dieter.
Ken Miller.
Casey DeYoung.
Wendy Batts.
Nolan Highland.
Mike Fanagrassi.
Welcome to NASM's Weight Loss Specialization course.
Welcome to another episode of the Random Fit Show, powered by the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I'm here with you. I'm Ken Miller. Thank you. And I'm joined by Miss Wendy Batts. Wendy, how are you today?
I am living the dream. How are you?
Of course you are. Of course. You're married to a wonderful man, caring, smart, wonderful man, beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I just know that if I were hanging out with you and your husband Tony, we would be having a good old time. And of course, you're living the dream because you got all that. But today we've got a wonderful guest, and I'm excited about the topic because it's one that as personal trainers, or if you're listening and you're not a personal trainer and you're just somebody who wants to live a better life, be healthier, and make improvements in how you work out through nutrition. We've got Miss Michelle Ricker today with us. So, Wendy, I'm really excited for that. How's it going, Michelle?
I'm well. How are you guys today?
Well,
Good.
we're good. We're not as comfy, cozy, and warm and toasty as you, but I think
Yeah, California's okay today. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
yeah. Well, Southern California. We're
Exactly.
Northern California,
Be
different
specific.
story.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited, not just for the topic, which is debunking diet myths with science, which is why we have you, Michelle. And I can think of a better person to kind of touch this subject more than you. But I'm also excited from the standpoint that you and I worked together. I don't know how many, 14 years ago. Back in the day, 14, 15 years ago with the Apex Fitness Group. So we've talked a little bit, and instead of me kind of butchering up your resume, can you give us just a little, fill us in on why we're here today and what you've been doing for the last 14, 15 years since we had a last chance to work together?
That's great. Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I know. It's been a little while, huh? So yeah, it was pretty awesome. Apex was really great. It was kind of my first, I guess, real step into the exercise nutrition space, because before that I was director of nutrition in clinical and kidney dialysis. And so I decided to shift over to prevention kind of from chronic. So since then I've been, working as a dietitian, but more had a private practice for a bit, but mostly helping companies kind of thing. So what I've been doing is I have some stuff with the Air Force, helping them and the enlisted and their kids do nutrition and fitness programs, some different wearable stuff, all kinds of things. I'm working with the Senate right now a little bit, doing some nutrition webinars with them.
Wow.
It's been really fun. Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's the Senate. So we're building this practice with them. And so that's been kind of fun. But yeah, I've really just been diving into the different spaces of supplement formulation and trying to keep the whole nutrition big picture going and like I said, mostly helping companies build out some pretty big programs and startups trying to get out the information. So yeah, it's been really fun trying to keep the whole concept of getting people motivated, I guess, for overall health, because it's really challenging. There's so much misinformation, which I guess is why we're here today, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I know that, it being, as of this recording, it's the beginning of the year. A lot of what, is on top of mind for people is, new year, new you. We hear that every year, and the cosmeticals of losing weight, losing fat, and the trend of incorporating a diet and changing habits, but then, come April, May, just to be generous with the timeline, people start to tail off when it comes to the things that they do to improve their nutrition and diet. And that's where I think, between Wendy and I, we're going to be peppering you with some questions on, okay, well, what is it about nutrition that people need to understand when it comes to changing habits? And we'll talk about lifelong habits and things that you can do for forever, or as long as you want to make changes in your life, versus why people make a habit change and then drop off. You know what I mean? So
yeah, well, it happens pretty frequently. Wendy, do you want to jump in on that?
I think, I know when we had spoke, and I was so excited that you agreed to do this, because I know as a trainer, I try to help multiple clients in different aspects of their life. So people that are sedentary and they want to do a complete lifestyle change, and then obviously all the way up to professional athletes. And so one of the things that we discussed, and I think is very important to really talk about, especially on this podcast, is when somebody comes to you, or if they were to come to a trainer, or if you're trying to make lifestyle changes and you're not going to do either. Like, what do you say when you're like, okay, I am ready to start a diet, but I have no idea where to start, and I don't even know what that means, because there's so much stuff out there in magazines, on social media, and you even see on the news, in TV shows that are like, they're losing this obscene amount of weight that isn't normally healthy. Like, how should we approach that as fitness professionals, but then also, if you're sitting at home and you really want to make a lifestyle change, how do you know where to start?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I get it. You probably hear it all the time. I get it all the time. Like, where do you even start, right? One of the things I really want to look at, because we're talking about diet myths, right? So if you think about diets in general, I think the biggest thing to look at for anyone, whether you're a fitness professional or you're someone who just wants to improve themselves, whether it's weight loss, add muscle, whatever it is to think about diets being either you're on a diet or you're off a diet. And I think that's really confusing for people, right? So like, what diet should I do today? Right? It's kind of to Ken's point, is like, well, are you going to keep doing it through May, or should we like look at something as a lifestyle? Right? So when we look at diets, they're typically like, hey, I'm going to do this now. And, the concept with diet is, if you change what you're currently doing, you're probably going to lose weight, or you're going to get closer to your goal for the month or two that you're doing it, just because you're on it. So there's something to say for being on or off a diet. I think that's a really big thing for people to look at. And then the next big concept with diets is, what's your goal? Are you looking for health improvements? Are you looking for performance? Are you looking for weight loss? There's a big difference in what you should do for your body based around those goals. So that's a really big concept that we could spend a lot of time on, but I think that's something, for everyone to kind of consider when we talk about diets.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of goes around with the big, another thing that you hear very often, especially in my line of work, and I'm sure yours, if somebody says, okay, so it's a simple formula, it's just calories in versus calories out. If I said that to you, what would you say? Is that true? And is that going to change my entire, how, am I going to make some transformation by just doing that alone?
Yeah. Well, are we done right now? Let's go.
Let's go, girl. I'm ready.
It's really great, Wendy, because the concept is, yes, if you cut calories, you'll probably lose weight. The big picture, though, is if you cut calories and you do lose weight, your body adapts. And then it's going to make a bigger difference of whether you have carbs, proteins, and fats. Then you have to really pay attention. So it kind of is, yes, calories in versus calories out, but it kind of isn't, right? Our research is showing lately that, or over the years, probably Ken and I have known each other, the past 10 years, we've really dived in, or we've dived in really deep. Yeah. We've kind of come into a place where we looked at how the body works and how it uses food for fuel. And we've noticed that fat is actually a really big fuel source. So that's where like some of these fad diets come in, is because, we're not necessarily all about just calories in and calories out. It does make a big difference on how you get those calories in, what type of activities you're doing. So it's a really big question. And I think that's something, as we go through some of these fad diets, that we should discuss, because it's not that cut and dry. And I wish it were, that would be so simple. And we can all just be like, yes, that is fantastic. Let's just cut calories and we're good to go. But it's not quite that clear. And like I said, I think we've learned a lot over the years that we're going to kind of now come into like some difference between how much carbs do you have, how much fat do you have. And there's no like magic formula. Again, it's all based on your goal. And that's why it's so complex.
Yep. So you mentioned fat, and since we're talking about diets, one diet that's out there, being the going keto, I guess, which is basically promoting, a higher intake or higher percentage of intake of fat. So, and again, as all three of us here have heard and worked with clients, and when we're talking about anything that reduces carbohydrates, because a lot of times, carbohydrates or carbs are seen as the villain, and that's what causes you to be overweight or not have the body that you want. But when we talk about somebody taking on a keto-based diet, what is it about that diet and the promotion of fat that people are migrating to help them get to their ideal body?
Yeah, good question, Ken. Like I hear it all the time, and keto is so hot right now. And there's reasons it is, right? Like let's talk about what keto is, right? So keto is, like you said, increasing your fat intake, right? It's typically, if you're looking at going into ketosis, what you're doing is let me back up just a tiny bit. I won't get too technical, but usually like, yeah.
For my sake, please.
No, I promise we won't. But yeah, so like the body typically uses carbohydrates for fuel, right? That's kind of why our blood sugar fluctuates when we eat and that kind of thing. It's usually because the carbs go in, they give us energy, we use them, and it goes out. Well, what we do in ketosis or keto is that we now take the carbs out and we use fat for fuel. And what they try to do in keto is you're eating good fats. So Atkins, if you remember that one, dig deep. That one's all about saturated fats, and you can eat any kind of fat. Well, that wasn't good for our heart. We found out because he died of a heart attack anyway. So yeah, we realized that Atkins wasn't quite the best way to go. But when we look at ketosis or keto, the clean way to do that, and I say clean because that's putting the body in a state of ketosis, meaning that you use only fat for fuel. And the body can do that instead of the carbohydrates. And that's kind of what, ketosis is. So when we're looking at the diet itself, that makes sense, right? The body can do that. The brain is made of fat, so it's energizing there. It actually helps with reducing cancer. You don't have any sugars in the body. Those that are epileptic, we see some good results. But for you and I, for the average person, if you're not having carbohydrates in the body, your body isn't fueled properly, right? And so you really need to look at how the body works when we're looking at the keto diet, right? So putting yourself in ketosis, meaning like no carbs, no carbs at all, meaning
Ugh.
fruits, vegetables, starches, all those are carbs. So yeah, so
Right.
if you put your body in that state, it's going to now be able to fuel, but over a long period of time, it's not healthy for you. The body can't sustain that at a normal rate. In ketosis, there's a big difference. And I say that, I'll let you guys jump in a second because I feel like I'm rambling on, but it's like when you're in ketosis, there's a difference between that and actually doing what most people are doing with keto, is kind of a modified, or what we call like dirty keto. There's a big place for that right now. People are not doing it correctly, meaning that they're not in full ketosis. They're eating a little bit more protein or a little bit more carbohydrate that's sending the body into a little bit more of a carbohydrate space than fat. And so now all of a sudden you're not fully in ketosis. So the body isn't quite doing it properly. It's not quite functioning all the way on one way or the other. And it's really hard on the body. And that's where we're seeing a lot of people are like, keto works. It's so fantastic of energy for a short period of time.
Right.
Or they're saying, oh my God, I'm in keto and it's not doing anything. I feel horrible or whatever because I have no energy. And that's because they're doing modified or dirty keto typically.
Right.
That's my ramble.
Well,
go ahead, Wendy.
I was just going to say, I have a question about that, because another common question that I hear when people say that is if they go into, like, they're doing the keto diet and then they say, as soon as I started eating carbs again, I gained a ton of weight, and it was because I was depleted. Now my body's holding on to it and I'm not using that for energy. So that's a huge myth that I hear now. So when somebody says that to you, meaning that they've depleted that macro for so long, and now you're bringing it and incorporating it back in, what do you say to people about the transition back to a normal diet that does start to incorporate all the three major macros?
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of like what I said earlier, is that you're either on or off a diet. So if you're doing keto and then all of a sudden you like go back to your normal eating, what was that? You're probably a little bit more overweight than you were when you were on keto. And then you go back to your normal way of eating. Of course, your body's going to go back to that state. We will fluctuate to where where our body feels comfortable. And if you're feeding it certain foods, it's going to look a certain way. So that depletion thing is totally, we can debunk that right now. It's really not, it's not a thing. It's like, if you have carbohydrates hold on to a little more fluid. That's the way the body works. That's why you can stay hydrated. So yeah, you're going from fat and a little bit of protein to adding in carbs. Yes, you're not going to be as completely depleted. You're not going to be as completed, I guess, or depleted. Gosh, that was hard to say. And and you're going to now actually have your body work on a blood sugar response. And when it does that, it has to do it properly. If you're going to have peaks and valleys in blood sugar, which is what happens when you don't do carbohydrates right, that's why we gain weight, then your body's not going to react properly. Whereas in ketosis, you're like flatlined in a way. And so you are a little depleted. And now you have to regulate again. It's not that it's all or nothing and the body's now like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this. It's really getting your body back into a normal system is really what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is one of those things when I was looking this up again, I don't like to come into these conversations totally blind, but the fact that, this is a diet plan or a way of eating that's been around since 1920. So when you talk about, being used initially in a more medical scenario with seizure, helping with epileptic seizures and things like that, and how that's helped people that way. But the fact that it's been around, I mean, just think that in the 1920s, people were looking at, okay, how am I going to eat, or what way can I eat to help me feel better? So when we, and again, talking about the different clients, and I get this question about this way of eating from clients that are in their 20s as well as clients that are in their 50s and 60s. But considering that this has been a way of eating for some people, or a diet, as you will, since 1920. That was one of the more amazing things about this diet. It was like, wow, that's why it's proliferated over the years, because it's been around since, oh geez, I mean, that's a long time. 100 years.
That was some good. Exactly.
I was like, wow,
math in my head is that 70, 80, 90. That's 100 years now. This diet's been around.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this, because a lot of times, the same conversation I'll have about keto, I'll also have the same breath, the word paleo will come up, right? And that's another thing. So whenever anybody brings up a diet plan, whether it's Mediterranean, keto, or paleo, or whatever the name is, I always ask that clarification question. It's like, well, what does that diet plan look like to you? And then as soon as they start to describe it and what they're actually doing in their efforts to execute that diet plan, then you realize, when you say keto versus dirty keto, that was a real eye opener, because I haven't heard that phrase before. It's like they're doing it, but they're not really doing it. But with talking about paleo now, that's oftentimes brought in the same breath, right? I mean, is that your experience when people they bring up the two, but they really don't distinguish the two?
Yeah, I hear you. And just to quickly finish up the keto conversation, is that I'm not totally opposed to having a modified keto. The thing about most of these diets, and I think this in moderation, and it feels good for you, and you're having energy and you can perform and you're getting to your goal, I think that's what we need to really pay attention to. So, modified keto, if doing properly, we need good fats. We really do. We need a lot of them. And I think a lot of people, in this whole low carb thing haven't done that yet. So we're not transitioning to eating a lot more good fats, but we do need some carbs. And when I say carbs, it's not, I don't mean white bread, we do need carbohydrates, however that is, whether it's fruits, vegetables, like I said, or whole grain stuff. There's a lot of options when it comes to carbohydrates, even though they have this bad name. But yeah, to your point of keto and paleo, we really don't, because like you said, most people don't do your research, Ken. They're not looking this up and being like, hey, I need to figure out what I'm doing. They hear the word, their friend tells them, hey, you should do keto, and that's really how it goes, right? And then they're like, hey, I'm eating fat and I'm keto. Well, no, you're really either modified keto, dirty keto, or like you said, maybe even paleo. So one of the differences where those kind of there's a clear line, but most people don't see it, is that paleo tends to have a lot more protein to it. And protein meaning you can eat anything. It's a little bit more similar to an Atkins, kind of there isn't much distinguishing between the types of fats. And keto is pretty low in protein if you really look at it. That's why I said most people do a dirty keto, because they add a lot more protein than they really should when they're trying to get the body in that state. Because it is really good. I mean, it's good for the brain to have that cleansing, but not for a long period of time. So when you move into paleo, it's kind of I think that was really big in the CrossFit space for a long time. I heard that so much, and I think it still kind of is, because they can perform at really high levels, and in that performance space, they're still adding in some carbs, and they don't talk about it. Again, I think all diets are very fluctuating, meaning that a lot of them are modified and people don't really talk about it. They either say, I'm on this. Well, no, if you read exactly what it is, the description of it, you're not. But you can say that you're close to it, I think that's the big distinguishing factor that most people get confused by. They're like, I'm on this, and it's almost like this, I take ownership of it. It's very personal. I think most diets are,
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to, and one of the things, when we were still traveling and and going to different gyms.
And
You know,
right.
one of the big things, as you're saying, like, you know, there's a few host sites that we go to, and they would sell like those prepackaged meals. So on your way out, you're grabbing something to go, and it'll say keto friendly or paleo friendly, and you know, if you're hungry, you're hungry. You're like, which one, you know, which one looks better? Oh, this one has the squash in it, so it's, you know, so that's the paleo, and this one has, you know, a lot more avocado or whatever. And yeah, so when you're talking about, you know, it is pretty individualized and it is pretty specific. And I think that's where, I mean, me having, you know, more of a Pacific Islander culture, it having, you know, both of these diets do not work in my mom's house, right? So that's where I live vicariously through you guys when it comes to learning about these diets, because high protein, higher fat, higher protein, and no rice. What you know. So when it comes to these diets, all I have to go off of really is, well, I mean, I'd be remiss to say that I didn't try it, but it's very hard to, and I think going back to the whole diet thing, if it's hard culturally, or if it doesn't work, if it's not compatible with your household, then you start to get those one-offs and the dirties get thrown in there. And but with the paleo, I see more people, you know, accidentally migrating towards that than the stronger effort that's required to go to keto. I mean, I know we're not here to this versus that,
that's a
but
really good point. It's a great point, Ken, because that's the thing with these diets, is that it has to be sustainable, right? I mean, that's the thing we're finding with keto, that was with Atkins, even with paleo, like you said, you know, you need to live your life. And like you said, back when we traveled or when we were social, you know, we were going to people's homes or we were eating out in restaurants. And in order to do some of these things, you really have to like pay attention and restrict, you know, and sometimes that doesn't work with, like you said, with your culture or with other people, you know. And so I think that's why so many diets fail, is because they're not sustainable. And it's really something to think about as you're moving through these and figuring out what works best for you. Is this something you can do long term? And that's kind of why I said these diet plans are typically on or off, because it's not something you can do in the long haul. Like I said, whether it's culture, whether it's just eating that much fat or eating that much protein, you know, sometimes you just can't do it for that long. You know, it's really challenging sometimes. So, you know, that's something to think about as you're, you know, looking through these diet plans, because it's really confusing. And think about your life is really the way to look at these. You know, can you do it? And then, you know, something that's kind of a little bit off topic, but related, is that I do a lot looking at your DNA. And if you look at your DNA, you can tell your nutrition and your fitness. And that's like little pieces of your DNA that I can look at. But if you really look at people's DNA, some people do well with like high saturated fat, and it doesn't cause heart disease. But until you know that, you have to go by what feels good. And that's body awareness. And I think we've lost that over time because of these things, you know, because of these fad diets. It's like, oh, I'm just going to do this, whether I feel good or not. Well, you need to really start thinking about your goal and how you feel. I mean, those are big things. So, yeah.
Well, I know, you know, I know that keto is the big one that I've heard about, but another really big one that I get questions on, plus a lot of people that I work with, you know, meaning my clients, depending on what level they are, but let's say that they're athletes, the big thing that they're doing now is intermittent fasting. And there is a ton of, you know, podcasts and a ton of information out there that if you eat in just this short amount of window, and you can eat pretty much what you want, but from the time that you start to this time, and that's it, you can't have anything else other than water any other time, or you're breaking your fast. That there's been a lot of positive research on that, and that people will tend to lose weight if they end up just eating in a short window. However, where the confusion I think lies, and I want you to maybe kind of talk about this if you don't mind, but not only what is intermittent fasting, I mean, I want you to kind of go through that, but then, back in the day, you also heard as soon as you wake up, if you eat something, even if it's small, it's going to trigger your metabolism and you're going to burn, you lose weight all day because you started your turning of your stomach, and therefore you're going to burn more calories. So that's why it doesn't work. So, in your experience, if you could talk about what it is and then why it could be beneficial to someone and why it's okay that maybe you wait and only eat for, starting at noon to 6 or noon to 8, depending on your fasting window. Is there only a certain amount of hours that you recommend if you are going to do that? And do you find that to be a healthy approach to eating and getting into that habit?
Yeah, big question. So let's
one of them all in one. So you never know what you're going to get from there, right?
No, I love it. You're right. I mean, it's huge. And intermittent fasting kind of in a way goes with keto, it seems like. So intermittent fasting has been, it's kind of like keto, Ken. It's been around for a very long time. If you think about hunting and gathering, right, they didn't have food available all the time, right? So we were going big periods of time without eating, is really what intermittent fasting is. And we've been able to now narrow it down to the health benefits. If you go, anywhere between 14 and 18 hours, that's like, you start seeing benefits there. And then you could do a couple day fasts or, longer from there, or every other day, something like that. That's what kind of intermittent fasting is. Typically I'm seeing people do, kind of the 18-hour window or, 14 to 18-hour window and then eating within a period of time. Again, with intermittent fasting, it's what you're eating during the time that you are supposed to eat. Okay, so there's a big benefit to giving your body this long period of time without eating. Really good benefits, actually. So if you go that period of time, what you do is your body now can start kind of building its own response kind of thing, if you think about it. So your AMPK, your muscle can regenerate on its own. Your brain can actually start regenerating basically on its own because everything's cleared out. You don't have any blood sugar response to influence how it's responding and or reacting. So your body's almost clear if you think about it that way. And it can start, like I said, doing its own processing. And that's what intermittent fasting has its benefits. So the thing that happens when you're, like, let's say it's an 8-hour window, like you mentioned, Wendy, of eating. So you have this 8-hour period where you're eating. Well, the thing that you're supposed to do is eat all the food that you would typically eat in your normal day in those 8 hours, right? So you're not cutting out a meal. This isn't a diet where you're like elimination diet. You're not cutting out a meal. You're eating all your calories. If you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, you eat 2,000 calories in your 8-hour window. Again, what's happening is people aren't doing that, right? So we're saying I'm intermittent fasting, but I'm not eating the proper foods within the 8-hour window. And then your body's not getting that same benefit because then you're depleted and then you're on a desert island and your body's starving and it's trying to look for food. It's not working right? Then your whole body is just in starvation mode, right? So there's a difference between feeding it in a small window, which is intermittent fasting, and then you can get the benefits because then your body has enough food, it's cool, it's ready to go. Then those other hours, it can function properly. Right. So there's the thing with intermittent fasting. That's why I think that it actually could be okay for people if you do it right. You get in your carbs, protein, and fat in that window that you're eating. Good to go, man. Then you're solid. Then if you even work out when in the fasted state, your body has enough to support it. It actually can function properly. Your brain is firing like nobody's business. Then it's okay. But if you're not getting that proper food, again, then you're, like I said, you're in starvation mode and you're depleted and your body is not running on all cylinders. It's not firing appropriately. So that's kind of to the first, point that you made, Wendy, is yeah, I think it's okay. There are benefits. But
what about, is there a window, like, when you said 8 hours, and I don't know if that's right. I don't know if it's 6 hours. I've heard 6 hours for some, 8 hours on a, from other people as well, that kind of talk about this thing. But is it better to do the 8 hours in the morning? Is it better to do it in the afternoon and the evening? Or is it just better for you to do it whenever you know that you've got that 8 hours? Like, does your body respond differently depending on the time of day that you do your fasting?
Yeah. So that's a great question too, because it's really when you can. So the benefit is those hours that you're not eating, regardless. I mean, that bottom line is that's when you're getting the benefit. So, when I was doing it, and because I like to try all these. I don't. When I formulate a supplement, I like to try it, and when I do these diets, I like to try it out and see what it's all about, and so for me, it worked better to go from, after dinner to, 16 hours after that of not eating. So then I would, have dinner, not eat until lunchtime the next day. And I would work out in the mornings, and I had a lot of energy, actually. It was fine for me. And then I would eat, and then I would make sure that I would get the amount of food that I needed between 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock or something, or whatever it was. But yeah, I think it's more whatever works with your schedule. If you have kids, it might not work that way. If you are more of a late night person, then you want to keep your food there. It's very individual. But again, the benefits are during the time that you're not eating. And so, like I said, there's different ways to do it, and all of them have different benefits. One of the biggest things when you're not eating, and like I said, whether it's 18 hours or a full day, whether it's 24 hours or 2 days, whatever, you're getting a lot of benefits that way. And what happens is our cells kind of regenerate, and it's cell autophagy is what they call it, and without being too technical kind of thing, but the cells kind of need to regenerate on their own and get rid of the bad stuff in our body, basically. Same with our brain. That's why we sleep, and we need to clean out all the gunk that's in our brain, and that's the only time it can do it. So it's like that when we're in intermittent fasting. We kind of go through this time period, and the body just regenerates on its own. Our muscles actually do as well. And so there isn't if you do this a number of hours, you're going to have the best benefit. I wish I could say.
Come on, Michelle. I want you to give me the secret sauce, because
right.
Apparently it's there. Everyone said it's there. I just can't seem to find it. But
I know it's whatever you can do. I would say, I try to tell people, start with 12-hour windows of not eating. If you can do that, you're getting benefit. Then if you can go 14 hours, you're getting benefit. If you can go 16, awesome, great benefits there. Yes, the more that you do sometimes, as long as you're eating in between, again, and making sure that your body has the proper nutrition is kind of what I can stress with intermittent fasting. Because, again, but it depends on if you're an elite athlete. It depends on your goal. If you're trying to put on size, you're trying to put on some huge amount of muscle, you really need to work at this. You can do it with intermittent fasting for sure. Definitely can do it, but you need to work harder, probably, because you got to fit a lot of food in there, and depends on your training. So again, it's what's your goal? And, but as far as big picture benefit, yeah, do some hours of not eating, and let's see how it goes. But make sure you eat,
I love it. Well, I know that we're starting to run short on time, but I really want to discuss one more thing, if you don't mind. But because we do have those people that just are anti-meat, they're all about the vegan diet. So, and with your expertise, what do you say to people that? To me, I love meat, so I can never imagine doing this. I am all about the cow, but besides that, you've got the people that are just, I can only eat, this way. I'm going vegan. Do you see, what are some myths that you hear about a vegan diet? What are things to watch out for? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, that's kind of a big one right now too. They call it now plant-based.
Oh, so sorry.
Yes. So let's get this straight right now. Let's just talk about
Pardon me. Okay, talk to me about the
Exactly.
plant-based diet.
So yeah, back when Ken and I worked with each other, plant-based was you're going to eat a few more vegetables. And then all of a sudden, like vegan came in and they were like, oh, we're going to call this plant-based now because it's much cooler. So I have nothing against being vegan. I am not personally, but I think that we really need to take precaution. And some people go into it pretty blind, meaning like, oh, it'll just be good for me. And I think if you've watched that documentary Game Changers, that actually put a really big push into the whole vegan space. And they brought up a lot of things that since then we've been able to debunk. I mean, the things that they brought up were not necessarily facts. They were, it was very challenging to watch. But the thing with being vegan is you're missing a lot of nutrients. And unless you're doing it properly, again, especially for women, this is what I find a lot is that women don't do as well vegan. And a lot of people go into eating vegan, meaning like just no meat and I'll eat whatever else. You have to really pay attention because the nutrients aren't as available. You know, a lot that we're getting from meat would be the B vitamins, iron, all those things that are really key for women, for men too, but especially for women. And if you're not paying attention to supplementing, then you're going to miss that and your body is not going to perform at its best. Your metabolism is going to really take a dive and it's going to be really hard for the body for energy. Like I said, the iron and the B vitamins are really big for energy and cell metabolism. So if you're not getting that properly, and it's really hard, like I said, when you're eating vegan to get those in. So you need to make sure that you're taking like an additional supplement with that. So I'm not anti-vegan. I'm just saying like, when you look at that as like a diet option, you really have to pay attention to what you're eating because you can't just eat like chips. You know, chips are great. They're vegan, you know, but yeah, you can't eat those all day and get the right nutrients. So like there's a big difference.
I was going to say, yeah, you can eat them all day. All right.
Yeah.
You can't have just one.
Yeah, we got our carbs. Check. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, that's awesome information just because like you guys like plant-based diet, I mean, you hear a lot of that and again, that's usually an option in that fridge at the entranceway of the gym and you have your keto, paleo and plant-based. So, yeah, and that clears up a lot, but you know, especially with the female clients that are paying attention and they do want to get involved with that diet plan. I didn't realize that you know, those special considerations as far as what the female physiology might need and what you're missing through that way of eating. So thank you, Michelle. That's
Yeah,
good information.
Also with that, just want to add one more thing when it comes to vegan is that, you know, we're seeing a lot more plant-based proteins out there. And that's a really big differentiator, right? Between just having typically it was whey protein and now we're having pea proteins and everything. But one thing to really look at with being vegan or any kind of plant-based proteins is making sure they're complete proteins. And I find that with anyone that's going vegan or vegetarian is that you really need to make sure you're getting the right protein for your body and getting enough of it. And again, I especially see that with women. I think men tend to be a little bit more aware of their protein. But yeah, it's like, you know, make sure that you're getting complete proteins. And it's really difficult in the plant world. I mean, you have to search it out and you have to have more of it typically than you would like a meat or whey protein. So something to really pay attention to if you are going vegan or vegetarian, just make sure that you're getting enough protein throughout the day. Because not only does it help with hormones and energy, but it also checks with your blood sugar regulation. And if you're not keeping that in check, then you're going to have nothing for your performance or your activities or energy or brain function. I mean, it just keeps going. But you know, really check and make sure that you're getting complete proteins because that's big in the vegan space, plant-based space. Yeah.
Old habits die hard, right, Michelle?
Right.
No, this has been a lot of great information. So I hope that those of you listeners that are paying attention. I mean, we've touched on some pretty highly, I guess, asked questions about keto, paleo, intermittent fasting, like you guys said, that's a really big one. And then now plant-based. And as far as nutrition goes, and again, it being the beginning of the year, these are things that these are habits that are more likely going to be tried more often than not, in my experience, when, year after year, and New Year's resolutions and things like that. So I think, we've exposed a lot as far as what myths are out there regarding eating habits and diets that are out there. So Michelle, thank you so much for this wonderful episode on debunking diet myths with science. So appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it.
I know we got to do this again. This has just been too fun. Yeah. Not that I don't like spending my one-on-one time with you, Wendy, but
I'm let's share. I'm good. So this is stuff that I find fascinating personally. So, I mean, on a selfish note, Michelle, thank you, because you definitely, taught me a few things, not only not to call it vegan anymore, however, but there was just a lot of really good information. So I really, really am, I'm so thankful that you decided to do this with us. And thank you very, very much.
Awesome. You're welcome. It was great being on here. I appreciate it. It was fun questions too. So hopefully it helps people.
All right. So if you like what you listened to today on Random Fit, please like, follow, share, subscribe, download on whatever platform that you guys listen to your podcasts on. So we hope to see you again. And if there's anything you want to hear, reach out to us here at Random Fit, and we'll try to get topics on here that you guys will enjoy, and more importantly, appreciate when it comes to improving your lifestyle and achieving better health and performance. So thank you guys for being here with us today, and we will see you soon. Take care.